History is full of leaders who faced impossible odds. But only a few stood at the edge of collapse, economic ruin, global war, personal disability, and still reshaped the future of an entire nation. Imagine a man who could barely walk, yet led the most powerful country in the world through its darkest hours. A man whose voice over the radio made millions feel safe while everything around them was falling apart. A man who was elected not once, not twice, but 4 times, something no other American president has ever achieved. This is the story of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Welcome to Historical Pulse. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born on January 30th, 1882, in the quiet town of Hyde Park, New York. He entered the world surrounded by privilege, wealth, and opportunity. His father, James Roosevelt I, was a successful businessman and landowner, and his mother, Sarah Delano Roosevelt, came from a powerful and well-connected family with deep roots in American commerce and politics. Franklin was their only child, and from the very beginning, his mother took a central role in shaping his life, education, and worldview. Growing up, Franklin lived in a world that few Americans of the late 19th century could imagine. He traveled extensively throughout Europe with his parents, often visiting England, France, Germany, and Switzerland. These early journeys exposed him to foreign cultures, languages, and political systems, planting the seeds of an international outlook that would later define his presidency. At home, he received private tutoring rather than attending public school, and his education focused not only on academics, but also on manners, discipline, confidence, and public responsibility. From childhood, Franklin was taught that privilege came with duty. His parents believed deeply in public service, and young Franklin absorbed the idea that leadership meant service to others. He learned to sail on the Hudson River, developing a lifelong love for the sea, and spent long hours exploring the woods and countryside around Hyde Park. These experiences fostered independence, curiosity, and resilience, traits that would prove essential later in life. Despite his wealth, Franklin was not spoiled in the traditional sense. His mother was firm and controlling, instilling discipline and expectation. She closely supervised his friendships, habits, and studies, often protecting him from hardship but also pushing him toward excellence. This combination of security and pressure helped shape his personality: confident, charming, optimistic, and deeply self-assured. At age 14, Franklin was sent to Groton School in Massachusetts, an elite boarding school led by headmaster Endicott Peabody. Groton emphasized moral character, service, and leadership above all else. Students were taught that they were future leaders and that they carried responsibility for improving society. Peabody preached what he called the duty of service, encouraging young men to use their advantages for the benefit of others. Franklin thrived in this environment. Though not the top student academically or athletically, he became well-liked and respected for his kindness, enthusiasm, and quiet determination. After graduating from Groton in 1900, Franklin enrolled at Harvard University. There, he pursued history and government, gravitating naturally toward politics and leadership roles. At Harvard, he joined social clubs, edited the student newspaper, and developed a reputation as a confident, affable young man with a talent for persuasion. He admired Theodore Roosevelt, a distant cousin, whose bold leadership style and reformist policies captured the nation as imagination. Franklin would later describe Theodore Roosevelt as one of his earliest political inspirations. In 1903, Franklin graduated from Harvard and went on to study law at Columbia University. However, he soon realized that law did not truly excite him. Rather than completing his degree, he passed the New York bar exam and began working at a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. While successful, he found the work unfulfilling. His real passion lay in public life, shaping policy, guiding society, and influencing the future of the nation. In 1905, Franklin married Eleanor Roosevelt, his fifth cousin once removed, and the niece of Theodore Roosevelt. Eleanor was very different from Franklin in temperament and background. While Franklin was confident and charming, Eleanor was shy, serious, and deeply committed to social justice and humanitarian causes. Their marriage was initially loving and hopeful, though complicated by personal struggles and emotional distance in later years. Together, they would raise 6 children, though one died in infancy. The partnership between Franklin and Eleanor would become one of the most significant political marriages in American history. Eleanor eventually emerged as a powerful public figure in her own right, championing civil rights, labor protections, women's equality, and international cooperation. Their relationship evolved from traditional marriage into a deep political and intellectual partnership, one that profoundly influenced Franklin's worldview and leadership style. Franklin's entry into politics came in 1910 when he ran for the New York State Senate as a Democrat from a traditionally Republican district. Despite long odds, he won, signaling the arrival of a rising political star. In Albany, he quickly gained a reputation as an energetic reformer who supported progressive policies, government transparency, and social welfare programs. His charm, optimism, and political instincts set him apart from many of his colleagues. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson appointed Franklin as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, a position once held by Theodore Roosevelt. At just 31 years old, Franklin entered national politics. The role allowed him to oversee naval expansion, modernization, and preparedness, critical responsibilities as tensions mounted in Europe leading toward World War I. Franklin traveled widely, visiting naval bases, inspecting ships, and building relationships within the military establishment. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, Franklin played a major role in coordinating the Navy's rapid expansion and logistical operations. He supported innovations in shipbuilding, naval aviation, and convoy systems to protect American and Allied vessels from German submarines. Though not a military commander himself, he gained invaluable experience managing large organizations, coordinating across departments, and responding to crises under intense pressure. Following the war, Franklin emerged as a nationally recognized figure within the Democratic Party. In 1920, he was selected as the party's vice presidential nominee alongside presidential candidate James M. Cox. The ticket ultimately lost in a landslide to Republican Warren G. Harding, reflecting widespread public desire for stability and normalcy after the turmoil of war. Despite defeat, Franklin's national profile had risen significantly, and he was widely seen as a future leader. Then, in the summer of 1921, Franklin's life changed forever. While vacationing at Campobello Island in Canada, Franklin suddenly fell ill. He developed fever, pain, and weakness in his legs, and within days he was paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors initially struggled to diagnose his condition, but it was later identified as polio, a devastating viral disease that at the time had no cure or effective treatment. At just 39 years old, Franklin faced the collapse of everything he had worked toward. The physical pain was immense, but the emotional and psychological impact was even greater. In an era when disability was often associated with weakness, dependency, and exclusion from public life, paralysis threatened to end his political career entirely. Many believed he would never walk again, never campaign again, never govern again. The months that followed were among the darkest of Franklin's life. He endured painful treatments, long hospital stays, and the crushing realization that his body would never function as it once had. At times, he sank into despair, questioning his purpose and future. But slowly, something remarkable happened. Franklin began to rebuild himself, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. He refused to surrender to bitterness or hopelessness. Instead, he redirected his energy toward rehabilitation and self-discipline. He worked tirelessly to strengthen his upper body, learn to move with crutches and braces, and develop techniques to stand and walk short distances with support. Though he would never regain full use of his legs, he became determined to conceal his disability from the public as much as possible, not out of shame, but to prevent it from undermining confidence in his leadership. During this period, Eleanor Roosevelt played a critical role in sustaining his political life. While Franklin focused on recovery, Eleanor expanded her involvement in public affairs, building networks within reform movements, labor organizations, and women's groups. She became his eyes, ears, and voice in political circles, keeping him connected to emerging ideas and leaders. Franklin also found renewed purpose in helping others who suffered from polio. He purchased a rehabilitation facility in Warm Springs, Georgia, where the mineral waters seemed to improve mobility and comfort for patients. There, he built a community dedicated to healing, dignity, and hope. Warm Springs became not only a medical center, but a symbol of Franklin's belief that human resilience could overcome even the most devastating setbacks. By the mid-1920s, Franklin's health had stabilized and his confidence returned. Though still paralyzed, he gradually resumed political involvement behind the scenes. He gave speeches, advised party leaders, and rebuilt his public presence. Many assumed his career was over, but Franklin saw his illness not as an ending, but as a transformation. The struggle had deepened his empathy for suffering, sharpened his understanding of human vulnerability, and strengthened his commitment to public service. In 1928, Franklin staged a remarkable political comeback. He ran for governor of New York and won. The timing could not have been more significant. Within a year of his inauguration, the stock market crashed, plunging the United States into the worst economic crisis in its history, the Great Depression. As governor, Franklin confronted mass unemployment, poverty, hunger, and despair. Factories closed, banks failed, farms collapsed, and millions of Americans found themselves without work, homes, or hope. Unlike many leaders of the time who believed government should remain largely passive during economic downturns, Franklin believed the crisis demanded bold action. He launched relief programs, expanded public works projects, and experimented with government intervention to stabilize the economy and support struggling citizens. Franklin's leadership style as governor was pragmatic, flexible, and innovative. He did not cling rigidly to ideology. Instead, he tested policies, adjusted based on results, and prioritized human needs over abstract economic theories. He believed government had a moral responsibility to protect its citizens from starvation, homelessness, and despair. This philosophy would later become the foundation of his presidency. In 1932, as the Great Depression deepened and President Herbert Hoover struggled to restore confidence, Franklin emerged as the Democratic Party's leading presidential candidate. His optimism, energy, and willingness to embrace reform contrasted sharply with the perceived inaction of the incumbent administration. During the campaign, Franklin promised a New Deal for the American people, a phrase that captured both hope and transformation, though its specific meaning remained open to interpretation. At the Democratic National Convention, Franklin broke tradition by traveling in person to accept the nomination, delivering a speech that emphasized action, courage, and unity. He declared that the nation needed bold, persistent experimentation and that the government must be willing to try new approaches rather than accept paralysis and suffering. His message resonated deeply with voters desperate for change. In November 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt won the presidency in a landslide, carrying 42 of 48 states and securing overwhelming popular support. At 50 years old, he became the 32nd President of the United States, a man who could barely walk, yet stood poised to confront the greatest economic crisis in American history. When Franklin took office on March 4, 1933, the nation was in chaos. Banks were collapsing, businesses were failing, farmers were losing their land, and unemployment exceeded 25%. Fear and uncertainty dominated daily life. In many cities, people lined up for soup kitchens and bread lines. Confidence in capitalism, democracy, and government itself was crumbling. In his inaugural address, Franklin delivered words that would become immortal. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. With that simple phrase, he reframed the crisis not merely as an economic disaster, but as a psychological one. He argued that panic, despair, and inaction were as dangerous as unemployment and poverty. What the nation needed, he insisted, was confidence, courage, and collective effort. Immediately after taking office, Franklin launched an unprecedented wave of government action known as the First 100 Days. Congress passed sweeping legislation to stabilize banks, reform finance, provide relief to the unemployed, and stimulate economic recovery. The speed and scale of these reforms were unmatched in American history. One of Franklin's first actions was declaring a nationwide bank holiday, temporarily closing all banks to prevent further panic-driven withdrawals. During this pause, government inspectors examined financial institutions and allowed only stable banks to reopen. This decisive move restored public confidence, and when banks reopened, people returned their money rather than withdrawing it. The banking system stabilized almost overnight. Franklin also created agencies to provide direct relief and employment. The Civilian Conservation Corps hired young men to work on environmental projects, building trails, planting trees, and conserving natural resources. The Public Works Administration funded large infrastructure projects, including dams, bridges, schools, and roads. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration distributed aid to states and local governments to support the unemployed and homeless. To reform industry and agriculture, Franklin introduced policies that aimed to stabilize prices, regulate production, and improve wages and working conditions. The Agricultural Adjustment Act sought to raise farm prices by reducing crop surpluses and providing subsidies to farmers. The National Industrial Recovery Act encouraged industries to establish codes of fair competition, setting standards for wages, hours, and production. Perhaps most importantly, Franklin redefined the relationship between government and citizens. For the first time, the federal government assumed responsibility for economic stability, social welfare, and collective security on a national scale. This shift fundamentally transformed American political culture. establishing expectations that government should act proactively to protect citizens from economic catastrophe. Franklin's leadership style was unlike anything Americans had seen before. He communicated directly with the public through radio broadcasts known as fireside chats. In calm, conversational tones, he explained complex policies in simple language, reassured anxious citizens, and fostered a sense of shared struggle and national unity. Millions gathered around radios to hear his voice, finding comfort and clarity in his steady presence. These broadcasts helped restore trust in government and made citizens feel personally connected to their president. Yet Franklin's New Deal was not without controversy. Critics from the business community accused him of excessive government intervention and socialism. Conservatives argued that his policies undermined free markets and individual responsibility. Meanwhile, critics on the left claimed he did not go far enough to redistribute wealth or dismantle economic inequality. Some accused him of protecting banks and corporations more than workers and farmers. Despite criticism, Franklin remained pragmatic. He adjusted policies when they failed, abandoned programs that proved ineffective, and expanded those that worked. When the Supreme Court struck down several key New Deal programs as unconstitutional, Franklin responded by revising legislation and controversially proposing to expand the court to secure favorable rulings. Though the so-called court-packing plan failed politically, it ultimately pressured the court into shifting its stance on federal regulation, allowing later reforms to stand. By the mid-1930s, Franklin launched what historians call the Second New Deal, a more ambitious wave of reforms aimed at long-term social security and economic justice. In 1935, he signed the Social Security Act, establishing retirement pensions, unemployment insurance, and assistance for disabled and impoverished citizens. This program fundamentally transformed American society, creating a safety net that continues to shape public policy today. That same year, Franklin supported the Wagner Act, which guaranteed workers the right to form unions and bargain collectively. This strengthened labor movements, improved wages and working conditions, and helped balance power between employers and employees. He also created the Works Progress Administration, which employed millions in construction, infrastructure, arts, education, and public service projects. Writers, artists, musicians, teachers, and laborers alike found work restoring public spaces, producing cultural projects, and preserving American history. Despite these achievements, the Great Depression did not fully end during Franklin's first 2 terms. Though conditions improved significantly, unemployment remained high and economic recovery was uneven. In 1937, a recession triggered by reductions in government spending and monetary tightening reversed some gains, reminding policymakers of the fragile nature of recovery. Franklin responded by renewing stimulus spending, reaffirming his belief that government must actively support economic growth. In 1936, Franklin ran for re-election and won by an overwhelming margin, carrying 46 of 48 states and achieving one of the largest electoral victories in American history. His victory confirmed broad public support for the New Deal and his leadership. For millions of Americans, Franklin represented hope, stability, and compassion in a time of uncertainty. Beyond economics, Franklin's presidency reshaped the role of government in civil rights, labor, agriculture, and social welfare. However, his record on racial equality was complex and deeply flawed. While he supported some reforms that indirectly benefited African Americans, such as employment programs and social welfare, he often avoided confronting segregation directly, fearing political backlash from Southern Democrats whose support he relied upon to pass legislation. As a result, many New Deal programs were implemented in discriminatory ways, excluding or disadvantaging Black Americans, particularly in the South. Yet Eleanor Roosevelt emerged as a powerful advocate for civil rights during this period. She supported anti-lynching campaigns, desegregation efforts, and racial justice initiatives, often pushing Franklin privately and publicly to take stronger action. Though constrained by political realities, Franklin gradually appointed African Americans to advisory roles, supported educational opportunities, and advanced limited civil rights measures. Still, his legacy on race remains mixed, reflecting both progress and missed opportunities. As the United States struggled to recover economically, the world beyond its borders moved toward catastrophe. In Europe, Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany, dismantling democracy, persecuting minorities, and rebuilding the military in defiance of international treaties. In Italy, Benito Mussolini expanded fascist rule. In Asia, Japan pursued aggressive imperial expansion, invading China and threatening regional stability. Across the globe, authoritarianism surged as democratic institutions weakened. During the 1930s, the United States remained deeply isolationist. Memories of World War I, combined with economic hardship, made Americans reluctant to engage in foreign conflicts. Congress passed neutrality acts to limit arms sales and involvement in overseas wars. Franklin personally recognized the growing threat posed by fascist regimes, but he faced immense political constraints in advocating intervention. Nevertheless, Franklin sought to prepare the nation quietly for potential conflict. He expanded military spending, strengthened naval capabilities, and cultivated relationships with allied leaders, particularly British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. He also worked to shift public opinion gradually, warning Americans that the spread of aggression abroad threatened democracy everywhere. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, triggering World War II in Europe. Britain and France declared war, and within months, much of Western Europe fell to Nazi control. France collapsed in 1940, leaving Britain isolated against the Axis powers. The situation was dire. Many Americans sympathized with Britain, but still opposed direct involvement in war. Franklin responded by redefining American neutrality. Through programs like Lend-Lease, he provided massive material support to allied nations, particularly Britain and later the Soviet Union, without formally entering the war. The United States became what Franklin called the arsenal of democracy, supplying weapons, ships, aircraft, food, and industrial resources critical to the Allied war effort. In 1940, as global tensions escalated, Franklin faced a historic decision. No American president had ever sought a third term, and the tradition of stepping down after 2 terms was deeply ingrained. Yet Franklin believed the world crisis demanded experienced leadership and continuity. With Europe engulfed in war and American security increasingly at risk, he ran for re-election and won, becoming the first president to serve more than 2 terms. Meanwhile, relations with Japan deteriorated rapidly. Japan's expansion into China and Southeast Asia threatened American economic and strategic interests in the Pacific. In response, the United States imposed economic sanctions and embargoes on critical materials, including oil and steel. These measures severely strained Japan's economy and military capabilities, increasing the likelihood of conflict. Despite mounting tensions, Franklin continued to pursue diplomatic solutions, seeking to avoid war while defending American interests. However, on December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack killed over 2,000 Americans, destroyed much of the Pacific Fleet, and shocked the nation. The following day, Franklin addressed Congress and the American people, declaring December 7th, a date which will live in infamy. He asked for a declaration of war against Japan, which Congress approved almost unanimously. Within days, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States, drawing the nation fully into World War II. Franklin now faced the greatest challenge of his life, leading the United States through a global war against totalitarian regimes determined to dominate the world. The stakes were unprecedented. The survival of democracy itself seemed uncertain. Under Franklin's leadership, the United States mobilized its economy, industry, and population on a massive scale. Factories converted to war production, churning out tanks, planes, ships, and weapons at astonishing rates. Millions of Americans joined the armed forces, while millions more worked in factories, shipyards, and research laboratories. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, symbolized by the iconic image of Rosie the Riveter. Franklin coordinated closely with Allied leaders, particularly Winston Churchill and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin. Together, they formed the Big Three, shaping Allied strategy, resource allocation, and post-war planning. Despite ideological differences and geopolitical tensions, Franklin believed cooperation with the Soviet Union was essential to defeating Nazi Germany, which he considered the primary enemy. Strategically, Franklin supported a Europe-first policy, prioritizing the defeat of Germany before fully focusing on Japan. American forces joined British troops in North Africa, Italy, and ultimately Western Europe, culminating in the D-Day invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944, the largest amphibious assault in history. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, U.S. forces engaged in brutal island-hopping campaigns against Japanese defenses, gradually advancing toward the Japanese homeland. Throughout the war, Franklin maintained his commitment to democratic values even while exercising extraordinary executive powers. He expanded federal authority to regulate industry, ration goods, control prices, and direct labor. He also faced difficult ethical and constitutional decisions, none more controversial than the internment of Japanese Americans. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, fears of espionage and sabotage led Franklin to authorize the relocation and incarceration of over 120,000 Japanese Americans, most of them U.S. citizens, from the West Coast to internment camps. These individuals were detained without evidence of wrongdoing, deprived of their property, and subjected to years of hardship. Though widely supported at the time, this policy is now recognized as a grave injustice driven by racism, fear, and wartime hysteria. Franklin's decision remains one of the most troubling aspects of his legacy. Despite these moral failures, Franklin remained deeply committed to the broader vision of freedom, democracy, and international cooperation. In 1941, before America formally entered the war, he and Churchill issued the Atlantic Charter, outlining shared principles for a post-war world based on self-determination, economic cooperation, and collective security. This document later inspired the creation of the United Nations and shaped global aspirations for peace and stability. Franklin believed that lasting peace required more than military victory. He argued that economic insecurity, political instability, and social injustice had fueled the rise of fascism and war in the first place. Therefore, the post-war world must address these root causes through international cooperation, development, and institutional reform. He envisioned a global system in which major powers work together to prevent future conflicts and support human progress. In 1944, as the war continued, Franklin ran for an unprecedented fourth term. His health was visibly declining, and concerns grew about his physical capacity to serve. Yet many Americans believed his experience and leadership remained indispensable during the final stages of the war and the transition to peace. He won re-election, defeating Republican challenger Thomas E. Dewey, though by a narrower margin than in previous victories. Behind the scenes, Franklin's health had deteriorated significantly. He suffered from severe hypertension, heart disease, exhaustion, and the long-term effects of polio. His doctors often concealed the severity of his condition from the public and even from political leaders, fearing that disclosure might undermine morale and stability during wartime. Despite physical weakness, Franklin continued working tirelessly, traveling to conferences, meeting with allies, and shaping post-war plans. In February 1945, Franklin traveled to Yalta in Crimea to meet with Churchill and Stalin. There, the Allied leaders negotiated the final stages of the war in Europe and the framework for post-war governance. They discussed the division of Germany, the creation of occupation zones, reparations, and the formation of the United Nations. Franklin prioritized securing Soviet participation in the war against Japan and ensuring cooperation in the emerging global order. The Yalta Conference remains controversial. Critics later accused Franklin of conceding too much to Stalin, enabling Soviet domination of Eastern Europe. Supporters argue that the realities of military power and wartime conditions left few alternatives, and that Franklin achieved the best possible outcomes under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Regardless, Yalta symbolized both the promise and the tensions of post-war international cooperation. Shortly after returning from Yalta, Franklin traveled to Warm Springs, Georgia, seeking rest and recovery. On April 12, 1945, while sitting for a portrait, he suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. He died suddenly at age 63. The nation was stunned. Millions mourned the loss of the leader who had guided them through depression and war, fear and uncertainty, suffering and sacrifice. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had served as president for over 12 years, longer than any other leader in American history. During his tenure, he transformed the role of government, redefined the presidency, reshaped the American economy, and helped lead the world toward victory against fascism. His death came just weeks before Germany's surrender and months before Japan's defeat, meaning he did not live to see the full realization of the victory he had worked so tirelessly to achieve. Vice President Harry S. Truman succeeded him and carried forward many of his policies, including overseeing the final stages of the war, authorizing the use of atomic weapons against Japan and helping establish the United Nations, one of Franklin's lifelong dreams. Though Franklin did not live to see the post-war world he envisioned, his influence shaped its foundations. Franklin's legacy is vast, complex, and deeply consequential. Domestically, he fundamentally altered the relationship between government and citizens. Before his presidency, the federal government played a relatively limited role in economic and social life. After Franklin, Americans expected government to stabilize the economy, protect workers, provide social insurance, regulate finance, and intervene during crises. Programs like Social Security, labor protections, banking regulation, public works, and agricultural support became permanent features of American governance. His presidency also reshaped the Democratic Party, forging a new political coalition that included working-class voters, labor unions, immigrants, African Americans in northern cities, farmers, intellectuals, and urban professionals. This coalition dominated American politics for decades and redefined the ideological landscape of the nation. Franklin's vision of liberal democracy, economic security, and social responsibility became central to modern American political thought. Internationally, Franklin helped transform the United States from an isolationist power into a global leader. He believed America had a responsibility not only to protect its own interests, but also to promote democracy, stability, and cooperation worldwide. His advocacy for international institutions, collective security, and multilateral diplomacy laid the groundwork for the post-war global order, including the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. Yet Franklin's legacy is not without controversy. His administration's failure to confront racial segregation more directly perpetuated inequality and injustice. Many New Deal programs excluded or marginalized African Americans, especially in the South, reinforcing systemic discrimination. His authorization of Japanese American internment remains a moral stain on his record, demonstrating how fear and prejudice can undermine constitutional principles even under democratic leadership. Additionally, critics argue that some New Deal policies increased government power excessively, distorted markets, or prolonged economic recovery. Others contend that Franklin's political pragmatism led him to compromise principles in pursuit of power or stability. These debates continue among historians, economists, and political theorists, reflecting the complexity of his presidency and the enduring impact of his decisions. Nevertheless, Franklin Delano Roosevelt remains widely regarded as one of the greatest presidents in American history. His leadership during the Great Depression restored hope, stability, and confidence at a time when democracy itself seemed at risk. His wartime leadership helped defeat fascism and preserve freedom across much of the world. His personal resilience in the face of disability inspired millions, demonstrating that strength does not come from physical power alone, but from courage, determination, empathy, and vision. Perhaps Franklin's most enduring legacy lies not in any single policy or program, but in the transformation of the presidency itself. He expanded the role of the executive branch, using the office as a platform for moral leadership, public communication, and national mobilization. He spoke directly to the people, cultivated emotional connection, and framed political challenges as shared struggles requiring collective action. In doing so, he redefined what it meant to lead a modern democratic nation in an age of crisis. Franklin's fireside chats remain legendary not merely for their rhetorical skill, but for their emotional resonance. At a time when fear dominated American life, his calm voice reassured citizens that their government was working, that their suffering was understood, and that their future could still be bright. He spoke not as a distant authority figure, but as a neighbor, a friend, a fellow traveler through uncertainty. This connection between leader and people became one of the defining features of modern political communication. His personal journey from privileged youth to paralyzed statesman also reshaped his character and leadership style. Polio stripped him of physical strength but gave him emotional depth. It taught him patience, humility, perseverance, and empathy. He learned to listen, to compromise, to understand suffering, and to value resilience over dominance. Many historians believe his disability made him a better leader, more compassionate, more flexible, and more attuned to human vulnerability. Franklin's marriage to Eleanor Roosevelt further enriched his worldview. Eleanor challenged his assumptions, broadened his perspectives and pushed him toward greater social awareness. She served as his conscience on issues of justice, equality, and human dignity, often speaking truths he could not say publicly. Their partnership demonstrated that leadership need not be solitary and that progress often emerges from dialogue, tension, and collaboration. During World War II, Franklin confronted unprecedented moral and strategic dilemmas. He balanced civil liberties against national security, alliance building against ideological differences, military necessity against humanitarian concerns. He made choices that saved lives and choices that caused suffering. He operated in a world of uncertainty, limited information, and immense pressure, where every decision carried enormous consequences. Judging his actions requires not only moral clarity but historical empathy, understanding the constraints, fears, and realities of his time. His vision for the post-war world centered on cooperation rather than domination, institutions rather than isolation, and collective security rather than unilateral power. Though the Cold War soon divided the global order, many of Franklin's ideas endured, shaping international diplomacy and governance for generations. The United Nations, imperfect though it may be, remains one of the most significant expressions of his belief that humanity must work together to prevent war and promote peace. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's influence extended far beyond his lifetime. His presidency reshaped constitutional interpretation, economic policy, social welfare, labor relations, civil-military relations, and global diplomacy. Future presidents, whether liberal or conservative, operated within a political landscape he fundamentally transformed. His legacy continues to shape debates about government responsibility, economic justice, executive power, and international engagement. Yet beyond policy and power, Franklin's story is ultimately one of human resilience. He confronted personal catastrophe and refused to surrender. He faced national collapse and refused to accept despair. He encountered global war and refused to retreat from responsibility. In each case, he chose action over paralysis, hope over fear, and cooperation over division. When Franklin took office in 1933, Americans were hungry, unemployed, and uncertain about their future. When he died in 1945, they stood on the brink of victory in the greatest war in human history, with renewed confidence in democracy, industry, and collective action. Though challenges remained, including racial injustice, global tension, and economic inequality, the nation had been transformed by 12 years of extraordinary leadership. Franklin once said that, in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way. Yet his own life defied simple planning. Privilege did not guarantee greatness. Illness did not guarantee defeat. Power did not guarantee wisdom. His story unfolded through crisis, adaptation, learning, and resilience, shaped not only by ambition, but by compassion, humility, and perseverance. He believed deeply in the capacity of ordinary people to rise to extraordinary challenges. He trusted democracy even when its flaws were visible. He embraced experimentation rather than dogma, progress rather than perfection. He understood that leadership was not about commanding from above, but about guiding from within, helping people believe in themselves, in each other, and in their shared future. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did not merely respond to history. He shaped it. From the halls of Hyde Park to the corridors of the White House, from the depths of personal disability to the heights of global leadership, His life stands as one of the most remarkable journeys in American history. His presidency marked a turning point not only for the United States, but for the modern world, redefining the relationship between government and citizens, between nations and power, between crisis and possibility. In the end, Franklin's greatest achievement may not be the New Deal, the Allied victory, or the United Nations, but something more intangible yet enduring, the restoration of hope in times of despair. He taught a nation that fear could be confronted, that suffering could be addressed, that democracy could endure, and that leadership could be compassionate without being weak. As history continues to unfold, debates over Franklin Delano Roosevelt's legacy will persist. Scholars will continue to argue over the effectiveness of his policies, the morality of his decisions, and the consequences of his actions. But few will deny that he stands among the most consequential figures of the 20th century, a leader who changed not only what government does, but what people expect from it. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's life reminds us that greatness is not measured by comfort or ease, but by courage in adversity. That leadership is not about perfection, but about perseverance. And that even in the darkest moments of history, human resilience, collective action, and moral imagination can still light the path forward. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.